Test. 1, 2, 3. 2. Now we can hear.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Welcome back again to Debate Boutique Presents Student Demo Debates. This is our second streamed version. The first one, we lost the YouTube fight, but that's okay because we've learned that it's not the battle that matters, it's the war. And so I think that we got them on this one. But that being said, our student demonstration debates are what week 2 of Debate Boutique looks like. It's for the first week or so, our students have worked on not only the content portion of their arguments, but also different drills to help them get better at conceptually thinking through and framing their arguments in real time, so that when we get to week 2, they're able to do more drills, more speeches, and then to gear them up to debates where their arguments get tested. And so we're super appreciative and excited that our students are willing for the stream to show the world, their growth and their ability to, make excellent debate arguments, as well as putting us in the ring once again to have these debates with them. I also want to say thank you to the University of Michigan for the cards that we'll be using in this 1AC via open evidence. I think that it is a very important practice of accessible information, especially for smaller institutions like ourselves, programs like ourselves, who aren't necessarily worried on the kind of accumulation of large amounts of information just given our size. And so to have institutions that do the work to make accessible information possible for our institutions to use for our own pedagogical tools is something that we wanted to put a mark on to say thank you. And so this affirmative, a lot of it came from the work and labor of their staff. And so I appreciate that kindly, and that it helps make these debates possible. And I think I said thank you to the students. Thank you all again. Thank you, Jacob, for appearance number 3. I'm just a stand-in 1A for right now. I'm giving the 1AC and doing cross-ex. It's going to be interesting because we are affirming the resolution. Actually, no questions about it, affirming the CJR topic. So, different style of 1AC. I'm going to be like, whoo, Jacob, this highlight. But I'm excited. And I think without further ado, we're going to get started. We will be affirming, the students are negating, and I think that's it. All righty. So let's get into this. Get my timer. All right. Is everyone good to go? Yeah, perfect. I am not. Boom. DNA forensic science is massive and utter failure areas in privacy violations to ensure DNA databases like CODIS that exacerbate racial inequalities and the criminal systems. Ahmed 19 CODIS laws searches for the DNA indexes. There are currently 50 million profiles in CODIS. There are numerous cases that logistics will make it mistakes to argue that there is DNA matches. In other words, now there's also a basic fear of creating genetic or dragnet creeping fellows in individuals and with no little to no department investigation and forging traditional forms of and this work that would allow actually were broaden the scope of the search. One of the most powerful projects of the use of databases for familial DNA searching the participant would have unblocked individuals who are already ensnared by the criminal system. The racial disparities and imprisonment translates to disproportionate collection of African American having their DNA taken and stored in federal agency databases. That 41 to 49% of CODIS profiles are from African American creases and DNA. Several such minority communities and sex-free racial disparities, and the idea of guilt by association and corrupting with family harmony as well as individuals and investigative in regards of their involvement with a crime. And this magnifies the stereotype of black criminality and legitimizes the conflation of genetics and aggression that ensures every racial racial inequality, criminal justice, and the society as a whole. As robbers, 11, racial disparity in DNA database and making community the most vulnerable to surveillance and suspicion. There's a disproportionate odds faced by blacks and Latinos that having their DNA detected in war related by the racial disparities, and people who DNA as criminal and have a greater chance of being matched to crimes and evidence that blacks and Latinos have greater odds to be genetically profiled against largely because of the discriminatory profile practices as the federal government. A growing number of cases extend the scope of DNA collection is innocent people. They are imposing a minor risk of permanently on minorities, blacks, and Latinos have fewer resources and life to challenge these are their stereotypes of criminals before DNA evidence is produced for making them more vulnerable and the DNA infallible. The experience of being a mistaken for criminals almost a rite of passage from African American men with the cardamom, and DHS is also adding a rescue samples from the non-criminal migrant rights that has way for massive biosurveillance stigmatization and puts at risk of wrongful convictions. Is Hausler 20. The Trump administration could soon begin collecting DNA samples from hundreds of thousands of migrants apprehended among the U.S. and Mexican border, including legal asylum seekers under a new rule that stands to dramatically expand a federal database of individual genetic information used by the law enforcement. This new rule, which properly authorizes the federal government to collect DNA samples from people arrested and charged with federal crimes, forcing the devolution DNA for information from non-criminals, Woodward for Taylor or William Fitcher Woodward constitute a victim majority massive notice for whole population surveillance that potential for abuses to raise the rule of fraud to stigmatize immigrants, divert a hefty sum of tax dollars toward a eligible vendor of questionable value and pave the way for other types of government abuse, including the mass use of genetic data or other purposes of solving crime and willful, as well as wrongful conventions deriving from mistakes in DNA collection analysis. And 740,000 additional samples annually would be phased in for a 3-year period. The administration has estimated, and the DNA collection from those arrested by the not convicted creates a perverse incentive for police to arrest more people, regardless of the likelihood of their connection to crime exacerbates the inequality while making law enforcement less effective. This is Traeger 15. Making these new tools available to the police agents upon arrest also raises the questions about their influence on the exercise of the arrested power. Access to such databases creates a potential for police abuse of discretion, notably with regard to racial clause, federal and DNA collection laws programs authorize the DNA collection arrest officers collateral benefits desirable beyond the prosecution of other crimes as the arrest creates the potential to solve a cold case or deter recidivist. The decision to arrest may be influenced by the officer's awareness of the screening regimes, assessment the likelihood that the offender is dangerous recidivist. Police decisions to arrest ought to be judged by their interest in prosecution for the crime of arrest. Streets steer police away from the purpose of systematic and suspended arrest for collateral benefits are intentional with the principal legal foundation of the arrested power, redistributive effect on the poor, all the arrestees, including the racial lines that have adverse effect on arrest quality, collateral incentives are likely to result in both greater unwanted inequality in both patterns and lower quality arrest and racialization of DNA databases pushes us closer to a universal data bank of minorities close to the objectivity of science that's ethically indefensible and exacerbates racial inequalities. Sutter 10 race is a neutral factor in the criminal justice system. The fact that minority groups are overrepresented DNA data necessarily means the pool of individuals subject to future search for DNA profiles and criminal investigations will disproportionately exclude minorities. One group investigates that familial searches would result in more than 4 times the percentage of African Americans identified as a cumulative effect that should push closer toward a universal database from minority perpetuating minority representation of criminal investigations. They perceive problematic of status based enforced research rights and criminal raise the fact that the genetic incident seems objective neutral may only intensify the perception that these are accurate as the objectivity of science. While modern science is more sophisticated and advanced than the genetics era, even today is misinterpreted to support simplistic notions about the genes and behavior, and lack of statutory restrictions and enable functions that creates that open-ended indefinite genetic surveillance theorem. 13 DNA sampling is incomparable with to that of a fingerprint. DNA can be confused and provides insights into a person's family and suspect to a particular disease. The DNA Identification Act requires a local, state, and federal authority towards that participate in the national database or adhere to FBI's quality assurance standards. It is a imminent threat that forensic scientists will start to use the junk DNA to screen for more personal data such as behavioral traits, health conditions, and mental illness. Federal law does not expressly prohibit the states from their using the name for whatever purpose the state deems necessary. The mother card had necessary, and the function of that function creep opens the door to a new form of biotechnical eugenics. The more profiles they have, the easier it is. This is Roman and Santos 10. DNA can also provide medical characteristics that physical attributes hold we individual may related to and personal information that are other wrong perhaps perpetuate the discriminatory practices that lost of the eugenics movement has lost credibility ever after the rights of Nazi and 1930s by re-emerged as a scientific endeavor and social institute holding evidence of biotechnology in the 1970s. The ability to manipulate individuals' genetic result in the removing of physical and behavioral traits not desired by the society as a whole. The infrastructure are able to access DNA profiles or DNA samples accumulated pursuant to DNA database statute. They would inevitably to identify the genetic genes that were responsible for particular traits and state racism, and it manifested through a biological methods justifies elimination of differences under ending war and genocide. This is element 2. State racism is like recoding of the old mechanisms of blood and through their new procedures of regulation. Violation is tied to the state's shift for their procedure of intervention at the state level of the body. The all use of the medical language is important. We're creating old problems, but also through the new tech things as well as emphasizing the biomedical, biological modern racism. Put on the word to survive to live. One must prepare to massacre one's enemies. And regulation of war when couples the mechanism, mathematics, and medicine power by power. That's the plan. The United States federal government should substantial criminal justice reform within the area of forensic science by requiring the automatic deletion of deoxyribonucleic acid samples when charges against an arrestee or job, prohibiting the creation of deoxyribonucleic acid profiles of individuals in the United States until they have been convicted of a crime, and requiring the immediate deletion of samples after a profile is created next to solvency. The absolute skyrocketing and indefinite retention of DNA samples from acquitted individuals and prevents a function creep and misuse of DNA databases. It's a Federal 13 that federal legislation seems to be silent regarding DNA sample expungement, arrested citizens arrested government or retaining their DNA samples indefinitely. Receipts may be allowed to store and rest DNA permanently. The amendment explicitly creating the preservation of DNA samples to plus acquittal and would avoid plus account Florence. Proposition 6 to 42% of arrests are actually convicted for their offense. 58% of arrests is a DNA sampling as well as the government permanent storage of their personal information. Despite what of those figures are incorporated to skyrocket states that are referring hesitant to adopt expensive DNA collection due to constitutional uncertainty will likely pursue legislation match our Maryland statute and expansive federal statute state and its consistency ensure and anticipation DNA collection and risk misuses that Federal 13 comprehensive of the circumstances as per rules that the governmental interest of the Emery Virginia election to always with a practice of interpretation or misuse of individuals for data that government's indefinite retention of DNA sample and possibility of an erroneous conviction due to over-reliance on DNA evidence.
Where did you cut it?
DNA evidence.
Okay. Are we good?
1 second, let me drink some water.
Nah, we're gonna assume everything was read. I'm not rewriting these two AC blocks.
So we're going to assume for the demonstration debate and assuming a 1A could get through all that was read.
Okay.
I am good to go.
What is the 1AC's theory of racialization?
I think that the 1AC's theory of racialization is that it's not one that can be totalized, but contingent upon like different ways in which the law has kind of, created.
That there is no theory.
That wasn't my answer, right? It's not that it's like one theory can grasp the different ways in which the law has interacted with Black and Brown communities or Black folks writ large. Our argument will be in the context of the plan.
That's fine. In the
context of the plan, right? That the kind of misuse of DNA has fed into kind of narratives of criminality where we understand kind of punitive actions of the law to assume that a Black person is, suspect of doing the crime. DNA has been a big kind of tool to justify that, where the objectivity of it has not been present. The 1AC is a challenge to that, and says that brings me to not the basis for conviction.
That brings me to my second question. Your med evidence kind of indicates that human bias is the key internal link to the misuse of DNA that the violates. What is human bias?
I think that human bias is like the feelings that one has when kind of encountering data, or just like the human bias that there is.
How does the 1AC overcome human bias?
I don't think that there is a way in which, or a single way in which a plan or even a person overcomes human bias. I think that the 1AC outlines a kind of defense of a federal statute or kind of reversal of one. That means that it's not left to human bias to make a decision. Laws are more fixed, which means that a human bias have to be interpreted or just.
So you're making the argument that So
law-
you're saying that human bias is contingent on the law? The
No, we're
ability to
saying
No.
that-
human bias is contingent on the law.
No, our argument is bias exists. It's a question of whether or not that bias can influence the carceral or DNA systems. Our argument prevents
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
the ability for that
I want to
translated
get to
into
the
material harm.
scientific. I want to get to the scientific rationality stuff. So,
Okay.
what exactly, as per your Sutter evidence, is objectivity of eugenic science?
I mean, it's just simply that, assuming that a kind of racial understanding of folks is the kind of actual condition, like pathology, right? We pathologize certain folks as being criminal, or kind of the way in which we write in Black communities as aggressing the crime, when the science is not there. There is no justification.
What is
for
it?
that statement
What does
being
it look
true.
like? So the one EC says that they kind of reject those notions. What does it look like to reject notions of rationality and objectivity?
We think that by one, the analysis that the plan has centered for the response via the law is part of that analysis, that we understand the biases and racialization that does get taken place, kind of encoding of DNA and criminalization. We think that the next step is the plan, which does kind of create a statute or kind of a law that is fixed to kind of be the curtailment to that, which we think is good. So it's been fun, YouTube. That's the last time you see me talking.
You still got a cross-X.
I'm sorry?
You still got a cross-X, the one in C.
Oh, wow. Big things. Okay, fine. You're going to hear me cross-X the 1 and C. And then I'm out of the way, YouTube.
Rohith, do you want to take prep time or you want me to go straight into it?
Just the same one and C, because they assume that they read everything, so just read the same one and C.
All right.
It has the case stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right.
You send me the one in C.
I put it on the
Yeah, the group chat.
Which group chat is it in?
the main one.
The main group chat.
It's the second one in C.
I thought I gave you the version. Here, hold up. The 2:07 p.m. one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Is everybody good?
Yep, I'm good. Jacob, you good?
Yeah, we good.
That sounds too much, Crane.
Um,
Y'all, I'm trying to give a speech and y'all just heard me say I'm getting ready to do something. So why would y'all start talking? All right, everybody ready?
Yep.
Fights against black folks is rooted in the collective unconscious society that plays black folks and is racist, homophobic, and phobic attachment that is racial. That is the racial utility only exists in providing the maintenance for the society of the well-being of human. Only through the rational conception of being human can we understand the world defined by the liberal economy and the phobia, the feeling attachments of black. That's 115. Fights against the slavery and the reproduction of the so-called civil life that are rejected the race of the violence against the slave does not have the same type of unity that is violence against the pro-colonial subject. We have to think more than really violence against the slave. The same sort of time, the social stability, and those who are not saying this is the responsibility of society, that is part of the society provides for that presents and provides for the coherency. This is global consciousness of Africa is located with the society of beings who are outside the global community and who are socially dead. It's acts of no projection or radical gesture of what you actually write. It says about how to reject the people in the world and is not willing to engage with the pedagogically oppressed of the violence, goes into rejection and only needs to render results head into those that the moment correct and never contact the element of the slavery relationship. The slavery relationship is the violence of prehistory. The slavery relationship carries over. It becomes the current same body cycle held of the human in the first on violence against the black folks is a mechanism for upholding the subjectivity of life being produces the relative violence in the regeneration form of everyone else in this first part of the cycle. Interrogation is nothing necessary to global economy, and this is the pushable collective unconscious meditations. The one he attempt to create an ethical relationship between God and the black folks, and the black folks post happen and fails to understand the conscious centralization of black folks in fact collected with the via the civil society data will always be required in the one AC deployed. This societal change will always be errors of those calculations opposing engagement in one-on-one relationship between data and Black and the one AC tries to activate that as 118. Civil society is held together by the structure representation against the recognition and incorporation of that being that the morality of non-logical Blackness as an element of definite and desanitized civil society happy with the errors of misconception due to the message of the truth of the world and to enlighten the knowledge and the God and the barrier of falsehood of confusion by the confusion and misleading to the error fully inherent within ontological science of statistical reasoning with the trying to describe the ontological digits of Blackness with the statistical instrument, but the error must be recognized. Blackness becomes a threat and is always existing to floating around civil society and phenomena like danger. Biometric technologies fundamentally rely on the knowledge of the present is something that is fundamentally increased to the Black holes and is exploited in the discussion between the existence and ontology. The one does not recognize. This means that DNA collection in its system reduces Blackness to its pure existence in data, but it forgets Black holes in their intent to reform. That is Brown 15. A certain and essential truth is written on the body of the highly meditated production of racial discourse through the scientific method. Certain bodies were recognized in general code popular biometric include recognition to detect the user's presence and the gesture. It includes those technologies, not recognition of verification of the user's identity. Biometric uses rather than acknowledgement of the user's presence. The notion of the body is made at a place and made automatically insecure and based on thinking to the roads to thinking through the concept of enactment in institutional sites. And independently, the debate is structured by an arc of redemption built upon the access of Black subjectivity. The one I see response to resolution of questions that regardless of education within the spheres prefixes the argumentative profiles that crowds out the grammar of suffering that can speak to the violence that repeatedly destroys Black being, but because it relies on the move forward to a digital disclosure, even if they want that the constant of their accuracy is rhetorical form and necessary siphons energy into manifestations of humanities of redressing that are parasitic on Black suffering. That is Volition 16. The part of the question with the greater power of all the question imposed in the world of debated and moves for stipulation of fraction and moves for rejection and in its moment required to equilibrium restore, which is the precisely the center of the critique of Afro-Federalism. It's a critique of the radical structure lenses to why is there actually need for anti-Blackness that slavery is outside why is the actual need for Blackness as slavery outside of their lens of interpretation? You have to think of the protection of proposal to redemption that is cherry picking will leave out the outside way to the deliberative assets from Afro-Federalism in the absence of redemptionization. Frame the impacts to the unethical to embody the capacity of the anti-Black world. Their impacts are only brought coherence to the grammar of suffering posed by civil society, which operates through a contingent relation to the violence, pushing out the consideration of ontological incapacity. That grammar will serve to distinction a level of form that is Volition 10. Ontology and capacity of the content element of fact is one cannot embody the capacity to be ethical is unethical to be free. The slave capacity of ambiguity by stipulation of fungibility is connected to whiteness as a structural position depends on the capacity for freedom and its marked as ontological and it's sustained by incredibility. Whiteness has no coherent elements other than its purely status of humanity. Amenity. The alternative is to engage in the process of self-abomination as a motive for fronting grammars are capable of grappling with the realities of anti-Blackness only through the standpoint can be forward and necessary articulations or explaining and dealing with anti-Black realizations around it. That's Errors 16. We have to give up on the idea of one to make the resolution in the name of something there is a fundamentally just an innocent entity with revolutionary forces have the task of representing any resistance to society must be forwarding of destruction of the society process through the process of the social society daily and must be destroyed by these institutions and practices of realization and intergender bodies within the social order. Self-abomination therefore constitutes the only possible horizon for non-Black structure that does not reinforce that the body is a negative negative identity politics. While the notion of solidarity with Black suffering cannot be stripped of a certain part of grounding and incoherence, if it means anything to cut the cart there at meanings. The rule of balance is the vote for the best theoretical motive, the understanding, the suffering, the slavery, when there's a person who want to see theory, the world of practice that operates through the series of contradictions and intent to readdress Blackness, then you vote negative. That is Jones 16. How does one develop a functional precarity of violence painted the portrait of the unseen ability of slavery action and subordination, establishing a relationship to the violence entailed by the practice and the most essential and seemingly internal forms of modern enablement without the efforts of all significant theorization of Blackness to categorize the meaning of slavery as a constitutive conscious element in the development of capitalism. Thus the constant element of the comforting global distribution of wealth and gear humanity tracing with the historical transition away from the and multiple forms of constant power, the constant unstable formation of the human as the normative subject of the core as subject. The question of Rohith's role in the non-black individual remains reading after pessimism and exercise to refuse to overcome an unrepayable debt that non-black people owe. Narratives of reform and addressing problems black folks face away to attempt to simply play back debt institution fundamentally continue to weigh back. That is Willow Hare 14. Slavery is an arbitrary form of social implementation for the modern slave and its practices and the police. And this is about the death of all of us. This is about the death of all of us who are buried alive and dragged away by the marches across the African continent. This is about the unpayable debt we have been made to understand. All of us have to understand these things of our social order have been pre-predicted in erasing those people in the past and the present who have been made into debt. How did the blacks come from a representation of a set of notions, cut the cord, and notions and move on to case? Quit away your Gordon instinct. Blacks is like to compare these to transforming the being involved in the transgender status. As Gordon assumes that is a progressive human being and a grounded battle for our criticism of ontology. That's more 18. Essentially, will be celebrating nothing else than the encouraging the productivity of action and transforming these equates to the translational ontological human capability of transforming nothing into productivity into something for black nihilism. Nothing of restriction of human form and terror attempts to control the project into blackness. The graph of human being action symbolism only applies to human subject in a metaphysical war, cut the card at metaphysical local database circulates data and collection continues its post plan that is uncurved 15 agreement weakening from the result of restatement of local database and advance of the DNA technology. I stopped that technology on the last card.
You're muted.
Perfect. Also, Ne'Jahra, can you like somehow move your computer down a little bit so we can hear you a bit more, wherever your speaker is?
Hold on. I might have been holding my hand on my speaker.
Okay. Heard you.
That's my fault.
No, you're good. Perfection. Okay, so go for prospects.
Okay, Daddy. I'm open for cross-sects whenever anybody's ready.
Okay, let's start. Gonna go down the line, the flow. So, Wilderson 15, what does a rupture in the conception of the human do to challenge or change the ways that laws have an impact on folks?
Well, because go ahead, Rohith.
Okay, so we think that the conception of human is what kind of brings into fruition the law itself. The law operates through a kind of juxtaposition off of the status of blackness in order to even bring itself into coherence. So our questioning of the very status of blackness is fundamentally a questioning of the law's very identity.
Okay, and so what is the kind of moment of the 1AC that does not kind of interact with like raciality, criminality, the ways in which blackness is kind of into the law? Why is the 1AC theory, why is the 1AC's kind of interrogation not consistent, at least with this kind of solvency portion of the link?
I think it's not like, one, the link debate will prove that like there are material ways in which you don't necessarily solve, but on a theoretical level, engagement with a political institution and a telos to solve is what we say is the inability, is what causes your inability to engage with our scholarship and the true realities of an anti-black.
We're talking about, okay. Yes, here's some things from Ne'Jahra though. So let's talk about the Brown piece of evidence. It talks about kind of, yes, the biometric surveillance apparatus, but mentions things such as like presence and non-presence. In the context of the affirmative, like why does this distinction kind of like matter kind of in the way in which we have described or explained how data is used to misconstrue the way in which kind of Black folks are kind of seen or understood?
Rohith, you can take this question.
Okay, so I think that the Brown evidence makes the claim that systems like DNA only rely on a process of seeing, right? So when you reform those systems, or reforming under the guise that the Black people will now be recognized more, i.e., when you reform for the Voting Rights Act, you
I guess-
are under the assumption
Can I
that
stop
recognition is mutual, but
Sure.
that is never mutual for Black folk.
The act is not the Voting Rights Act, though, right?
I know, but it's
Um,
an example of reform to a part
the
of an
act-
institution that
That's not our reform. I guess the last question is this Gordon indict. Why is like Blackness's capacity to transform itself a reason for why kind of the way in which we understand liberalism and kind of how Blackness still does exist and has a way to refuse not true?
I can answer that. It's fine. So the card is essentially saying that Gordon assumes the status of human is mutually accessible. Warren is just making a prior question argument that existentialism relies on that. So if you're critiquing the very starting point for how Gordon comes to his assumptions are fundamentally incorrect. Doesn't matter if he's critiquing liberal institutions or you do that, your understanding of Blackness is fundamentally incorrect.
Okay.
I don't need prep. I'm gonna send out the doc in a second.
And on that, or Jacob, am I good?
You're good.
Okay. So for those who are going to wonder, where am I going? I'm still here. I'm now turned 1AC to moderator for the debate. So hi, welcome. The debate is happening. Jacob is dutifully being Maverick for the rest of this round. I saw a question on the stream for where can we get access to the information. Part of the debate boutique model is that these students put together their own information. And so because they're not coming from larger institutions slash, camps, it's not that this information it is their own personal information and personal cards. And so we're not sharing those out. We are sharing them vocally, and that, the debates are out to be accessible. And so that's kind of our kind of sharing portion of this, but we will not be sending out documents to the public to, view, unless you know how to, flow, then the cards, but we're not going to send out stuff. But thank you for the question. Thank you for watching. I do know the internet makes things hard in terms of when things do kind of clock out, having the doc to help, but we're small, and this is kind of the best solution that we have to retain some of the integrity of our students' arguments.
All right, the card should be sent out. I'm gonna make y'all flow. You're not getting the analytics. Jasmine's face.
Are you being honest?
Yeah, like this is meant to be, people during the year don't send analytics.
Not only did he steal prep, he not even gonna give us the analytics he wrote while he was stealing prep.
I guess. Okay, y'all. It is good practice. Whoa. Okay. Heard you.
Like, y'all can have it, but I feel like it's more educational for, to simulate how a real debate would happen. I'd say about like 60% of people don't send analytics. Like when I debated, I sent analytics, but you should prep against, the worst, iterations of, people's ethics.
Alrighty. Y'all got this. Good simulation practice.
Just tell me when you got those cards. Ne'Jahra, are you good? You should vote affirmative to challenge the legalistic process that law enforcement agencies use to steal DNA information from innocent individuals. When you see Ahmed evidence indicates that recent court decisions allow non-convicted individuals to be placed in databases like CODIS. These databases not only fail in resolving the problem as they have a litany of false positives, but exacerbate racial inequalities. Black folk are 4 times more likely to be arrested under false DNA evidence. This creates a false feedback loop where an already existing criminalization of Blackness becomes a justification for further criminalizations. Police officers no longer need evidence to tie people to crimes. We can have fabricated DNA evidence from an abstract database. This is all magnified by the fact that poor minority communities don't have the capital to challenge legal biases. They've independently conceded they naturalize the idea of a universal genetic database, which extends state power over society, where in the DNA databases, individuals convicted and innocent become the ground for sociological research, defining Blackness as criminal, which spills over to broader social trends such as employment discrimination, the denial of health insurance. Roman Santos evidence says this culminates in eugenical praxis, wherein the state begins to literally manipulate people's genetic makeups to remove individuals. You should vote for the team that best facilitates a facial challenge. The challenge is white supremacy and assemblage that that attempts to secure white ethnostate in future generations, white people through settler colonialism, racism, capitalism, and heteropatriarchy. It's not reducible to any one of those things. It creates a perpetual war against population, could shoot us a national security threat as a sliding scale of the human that justifies genocidal violence. Reducing any of these questions to any singular lens flattens the experience of minority communities. Their argument that criminality precedes the law vis-a-vis their war on evidence is wrong. Criminality is coded through habitual repetition and illegal justification. The law existed prior to the Middle Passage, proven by European investigation or recognition of treaties within African prior to the Middle Passage. Our affirmative power challenges the translation of criminality into a genetic truth. We don't have to defend the legal system writ large. One is the higher evidence says the all or nothing approach of the negative misses the boat on how we change the system of carcerality. The affirmative is a non-reformist reform that disrupts the working of the legal system to build the potential for future abolitionist movements. To Gordon and Indye, we don't have to defend Black existentialism, just as critique of Afro-pessimism. Gordon evidence says the challenge at the level of representation is necessary to challenge the fate accompli nature of Afro-pessimism. They misconstrue an anti-Black world for the world itself being anti-Black. This argument is all at the level of abstraction. If we want a critique of their politics or the level of historiography, it disproves this argument. The circumvention arguments, this evidence doesn't say anything. It says reduce budget cuts mean that states are now investing in DNA databases. AF solves this because federal rules determine the ability for states to acquire DNA samples vis-a-vis conviction or non-conviction. Second is modeling solves this argument. Federal evidence says states will look to the federal government for action. Craig evidence says that CODIS requires following federal statutes, which means states physically can't circumvent a conceded solvency, which means we solve the ability of these DNA bases to operate through function creep, which solves all our impacts. Okay. Framework, they have to prove the fiat implication the AF is a bad idea. Any other framework lets the negative pick and choose the standard for victory, which always be self-serving and makes the condition for an AF victory shifting and possible clash is a better way to translate any of their framework benefits because the debate between well-prepared opponents has more to change people's opinion than one-sided lecture. They can't win a link to the action of the plan. We don't create new movements. They don't have any example. We just resolve or remove the barrier of DNA collection, which challenges the legal architecture that makes functional creep impossible. The desire to know the consequences causes all failure. Bracing 6. Reducing conversational and race to an ideological contest allows opponent to ally the inquiry whether the results of particular policy are desirable. Policy position masquerading as ideological stances create the impression that a racial policy is not simply a choice among available alternatives with the embodiment of higher moral principle, but in framing the debate in purely ideological terms, opponents are able to avoid the continuous issue of outcome viability determinations based on exclusively whether racially progressive measures exclude fidelity to the ideological principle of color blindness. Policy debates are resolved by the ideological exchange where further exacerbates hostilities and deepens the cycle of resentment and permutation to the AF and the alternative in every other instance. The narrative of no progress is effectively appealing, but historically imprecise. Major gains have been achieved through political implications or ethics risk throwing at the possibility of less violence, less dehumanizing future around the world. This is winning in 15. Anti-racist accomplishments have reduced the size of the pile, but massive amounts remains. Yet racial politics is always unstable. Racial despotism they to be fully stabilized. Any key historical moments rare, but inevitable. The sheer weight it becomes insupportable. Racism becomes formal. Yet that's not the whole story. Large-scale shifts had overtaken the monoracial system, undermining the re-articulated during the war. A break occurred. A seismic shift, not only civil rights, a whole range of new social movements, from the explicit racial despotism to the racial democracy of the president. There's a big leap. These demands ignited major democratic support. This includes civil rights, anti-apartheid, anti-colonial movements. Also included second wave feminism, gay liberation, others movement produced democratic, economic, and cultural shift, the destruction of European empires, the community going the Cold War, the rise of new social movements in the U.S. only started much bigger left mark. At let's permutation to the AF as part of the alternative. You should frame all their link arguments through the lens of materiality. None of their evidence meets a standard of specificity in regards to the affirmative, which should be a limiter for how you understand all of their often vague alternatives or voting issue. It makes it impossible to be affirmatives because they can shift the alternative in the block. You should protect the one error and the two error, and their alternative function does nothing. What does non-Black people do engaging in self-abolition do for the material conditions that they describe throughout the debate? They could be calling for police abolition or any of these things, but they don't even do that. They are radicals. They're not radicals. They're cruel pessimists who refuse to challenge the condition of the world. Instead, non-Black people should push the pendulum back, which answers their dead argument. The absence of hope is just as violent. Radical individual refusal, props of structural white supremacy. Political change is possible now, but individual pessimism and withdrawal is locked up by the system. This is reign in 16. Individuals' ethical refusal is missing a collective sense of action, little the possibility of transformation. We are left in the world of isolated individuals of conscience or feeling that real change is out of reach, combusting the very institution condemns mainstream culture that lasted the attack is the very change that band-aids fundamental racial reform as usual. Petulant can be absorbed. Demands must be combined with the more expansive politics. Activists do now then imagine and present their policy prescriptions. So now is the time to reassert the tradition of full revolutionary reforms. Their argument might make sense at the level of paradigm, but it's nothing for the experience for the individuals who experience the material violence of the criminal justice system. Only affirmative creates the moments of relief that are the prerequisite for the functioning of the alternative to happen in the future. 12 is private actor fiat is a voting issue. Their alternative justifies infinite versions of fiat where the negative debaters fiat Elon Musk global movements. This makes it structurally impossible to leverage offense. Their link arguments don't make sense. Group the first two cards. These are just ontology cards, which are answered above by the wind and evidence of Brown evidence. This evidence is analyzing how biometrics work, but doesn't rise to the level of an impact argument about the affirmative. Yes, Black folk can be non-recognized, or that the structure of understanding biometrics as recognition might not make sense or might be complicated, but that doesn't doesn't change the material implications for how DNA surveillance results in material violence through forced convictions or eugenic practices that then spill over to broader arguments. The arc of redemption argument's not a question of pure redemption, but understanding the fact that debating contextual implications of the laws necessary to create the blueprints for material gains. This presumes an ontology claim, which they have not defended. It also presumes a claim about social death and the irreversibility of it, which is inaccurate, that fails to attend to the more insidious methods of racial domination, which rely upon by defying Black subjectivity as human. This is Reinhardt in 16. The motive of dehumanization, dissoluted to articulate lived experience, it recapitulates the static view, reproducing a paradigm to which any actor's resistance of binary opposition is recycling of imagery, commodification, or all-encompassing master-slave dynamic is abstraction, and keeps us ignorant of comparative studies of slavery, divergent legal social practice, shaped colonial beliefs, strikingly different from manifested. They insist on the deities privilege. The intimate United States is a single source of politicized epistemology of slavery. The enslaved such are always perceived as human. The middle passage where investment in human frailty, trade did not operate by treating them as people who could suffer. Patterson's conception of social death can cause serious interpretive problem that is not meant to describe the lived experiences so much as reducing to common denominator. Social death is ahistorical, leaving no room for contingency. The biological aspect of commodification undermines the very concept itself to violently subject captives and to make them conditions that could deprive of social familiar times. Only a human can be so alienated. This particular process is fun rather than deplete the humanity of existence was also enters their Gordon indictment. Their critique of futurity is overstated. They mistake a theoretical opening for an ontological closure. Refusal to engage with these specifics of institutional politics at this particular moment in history is not merely conservative, but affirms the most historically anti-Black form of political life. Black people are sacrificed to the political now. Their theory of social death and move away from politics is pushing them to the margins through fatalistic regions of social agency. This is particularly damning given the fact that their ontological terror is a old reading of Spiller's work. This is Spiller's in 18. We might gauge how far we come to the data expressed towards electoral politics or regard this posture towards strategic error near fatal proportions. Postures which induce a conservative politics. A theory of slavery colonization is coherent. The theoretical posture which no longer intellectual technology advances a theory of flesh body that differentiates the historical position as its ideas and useful superposed theories and opening. Market opening. Good one.
Are you open?
Yeah.
Okay. What does the 1AC do to structurally does the structurally / theoretically change the position of Blackness?
What was the question you asked?
What does the 1AC do to change the position of Blackness in society?
So our argument the policy that we've isolated prevents DNA databases from ontologizing social descriptions of criminality to be assumed to be biological. Our Santos and Ramirez evidence indicates that this project literally writes race science at the level of DNA. Where
okay, this is what I'm a little confused about in the 1AC, the way you explain it. You guys kind of set it up as a way of like DNA, like tracing explains Black criminality instead of Black criminality explains why these symptoms of anti-Blacks happen, why the symptoms of anti-Blackness happens. What does this solving for this symptom of anti-Blackness do for the larger structure of anti-Blackness?
Yeah, I don't think our argument says that it solves all of racism or etc., or that it predates already existing criminality. Our argument is DNA databases magnify and exacerbate already existing racial discrimination, and that challenging this is necessary to prevent what is a social description to be ontologized at the literal level of science, wherein the government can begin to literally change people's DNA based on racial descriptions of aggressivity, racial descriptions of criminality.
Okay, I have another question. You said it is okay to start from the starting point because it is necessary, but you also contradicted yourself by saying that there are prior questions of criminality. Why is it important to start here instead of starting from prior questions of criminality?
I think you can do both. Like, we've agreed that criminality already exists. Argument is that in the status quo, there is a move to literally
you said that we can do both. Okay, what were your two perms? It was perm, do the app, and then the alt, and then what was the other one?
Perm do the app and the alt in every other instance.
Okay.
And correction, it's do the app as part of the alternative. So if your argument, for example, is that we need to challenge the underlying criminality, our argument is part of that process would necessarily be a prohibition on the government to write that, criminality into scientific objectivity.
What does your plan do for instances such as the Central Park 5 and people who are killed in the street like George Floyd?
So it could be performed in conduciveness with, ending qualified immunity, The AF itself does not solve all of racism.
Yes, but
That's your
what
question.
piece of your evidence says that it ends qualified immunity?
It doesn't end it. I just said it could be done with it. The
Well,
AF doesn't
why
solve
does
all of
it
racism.
suddenly lead? So why does it suddenly lead to it?
I didn't make that claim.
Post affirmative, does immunity still exist?
Yes. The AF doesn't solve all of
Okay.
racism. The AF also doesn't
All
get
right.
rid of nuclear
That's
weapons.
fine.
Right?
All right. Rohith, do you want to go into the breakout room? Or do you want to just go?
Oh, I'm muted. Okay, yeah, sure.
Also,
Okay.
check your thing. I sent the analytics.
All right. Let's go to the breakout room.
say he's doing a TikTok.
Like like that's what I thought. I'm not
All
sure.
right, let's hear this. Ooh, let's hear this.
In the order, the critique.
The big K.
Huh.
Okay.
The
How
K
should I-
to the A.
How should I flow this?
Okay, hold on. Let me get my tunes.
Jasmine, how do you flow for 1AR? Do you like flow what they actually say, or do you just write your responses?
A little bit of both. Like I have sections of the debate. I put where they do stuff.
What happens, when you don't have a piece of paper? I just have a Word doc.
You flow with your mind or on Google Sheets.
I'm not a computer flow, so I can't. Concepts.
You flow in
Anybody
Google
in-
Sheets, it's easier.
Just ask. I would say ask the question of, did they respond to the thing that they needed to that you have to go for on that part of the debate? Yes, no,
I'm
no.
gonna just write things I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
Okay. All right. The overview will be like a minute 30, so flow that wherever you will.
We're ready for this.
Oh God. Okay. Let's do
Got
this.
it.
Let's hear for Rohith. Let's go.
Wait.
Good.
Yep. All right, blank story.
Black objections keep from maintaining the secular being of civil society and undergirds the very structures of modernity. The phobian plea and implicates the entirety of the 1AC's attempted redeeming the political system. The political system is not neutral or fluid. They acknowledge that human bias is what causes these forms of violence. That's their first piece of evidence, but their refusal to first to confront that in conscious means that the libidinal economy brings us a bad presumption ballot. They misdiagnose the ability to solve only if the only measure for mitigating these biases is that the plan doesn't allow for them to be inflicted, then they're in a bad place, because all I need to do is prove a risk of a rollback, especially when the libidinal economy was not said once in the 2AC. This will be a question of debates on orientations and desires that motivate their very project. We understand the world is fundamentally framed in opposition to blackness, which affects every single action that we take. We are required question for two reasons. One, we are questioning the very starting point for analysis, more of that in the framework debate in the 1R, but two, for 3 power issue, then that will make your attempt at moving beyond blackness in form of re-territorialization. They're called to engage in instances of reform to our criminal justice system, assume that blackness can exist outside of that system of power, that our legal system can overcome the unconscious bias that it was built upon, that NYPD banning chokeholds in the wake of Eric Garner did something, but fundamentally those same interactions occur to this day. This makes their framing of the world discourses, framing of the world grounded in the discourse of humanism and the analogization of humanity with blackness. Scene one, the Holocaust is used as a framing point for our understanding of global empathy, and for politics, the impact is objective vertigo. Violence imposed on black folk is never a point of restoration. It's fulfilled through a gratuitous objective that is no ability to be resolved before they get claims to solvency. I'm going to stress the libidinal economy that, again, when dropped in full force, to provide a sense of rationality for things that will like what happened to homology, etc., or even why data collection is quote unquote not a neutral system, as they acknowledge. They analogize blackness as a very violent mode of understanding, and one that assumes a point of restoration. We outweigh and turn the case because only we have a grammar that can understand the constant pressures of anti-blackness. The ontology debate. One, I'll do that here. Ontology is inseparable from their grammars and assumptions about the world. Winning this area of the debate will mean that they have a universal notion of humanity. This is fundamentally incorrect. Force me to explain why. Jordan Davis subject to motive gratuitous fonts for playing his music louder. Why Renisha McBride subject to motive gratuitous fonts for asking a neighbor for help, or why the denial of formation of home ties in kinship structures is continual, as even Abdul Kabadi is met with protests calling for his resignation the moment he's appointed to a mosque. Without analysis, quotidian instances of violence that are continual throughout time, such as the impacts of the 1AC, they will lose on the grammar and reference and pay. I'll do the reference and stuff right now. There's a form content distinction prior to any analysis of the examples that they provided, which they provided literally 2 examples on the reformism stuff. We even indicted the very invocation of histories to move to isolate specific instances of a political change to disavow 500 years of archived violence as they move to violently liquidate the black experience. We undergo the very invocation of reform. They flinch an ideological reflex that is rooted in a phobic orientation and schematization of black flesh. They question on the level of form that needs to be addressed before the content of their examples. I'll do the example turns here. That they literally the only examples they have is their witness evidence. I'll do the voting. I'll do the Civil Rights Act. Here 3 multiple riders were burned in the aftermath of the Civil Rights Act, and that provided no sense of actual security for rights, because we've seen every instance of police brutality or every interaction, those rights are constantly put into question. Two, the rest of the examples on this page are one, not specific to Black folk, and two, are closer to the alternative than to their mode of politics, because they are forms of organizing that seek to divest hope from the system. Under the outside of our theory of referendum, the plan doesn't do shit. There are multiple distats. One, they carve out a sense of exceptionalism. They solidify the role of the criminal justice system writ large, because they divert attention elsewhere. Or reform requires a ceding of the logics of data collection and affirmation of the goals of the institution, and a criticism of a single instance, which means that their concerns over data collection are only a game chip for the substantiating of other forms of violence when all of their solvency claims, which they have a lot of their offense on, but we are merely making a claim about the re-territorialization in the wake of their supposed insolvency. I'll do the line here. They say that we don't allow for us to evaluate their consequences. One, we are obviously due. They get access to implications of the plan. We just think that is first a progression of their grammar before they get access to solvency. Two, they say that narratives of progress are not true. One, the Civil Rights Act moved that this witness haven't already answered that. They say that frame the alternatives materiality. One, no, it's about discourse materiality is what allows for circumvention to occur in the first place. They did the reference debate here there. They said that absent the hope is bad. One, that card makes a distinction. We are making a distinction between political and spiritual hope. That card doesn't assume that they say the Brown evidence. They say that it's not. They say that the link is. They said that the link doesn't answer the ways in which the DNA affects Black folk. It's a prior question link argument. We're making the claim that even if reform occurs, it doesn't do shit, because the starting point for understanding how DNA is inflicted onto Black individuals is from a starting point of acknowledgement of recognition, which the plan doesn't change. They say that the arc of redemption evidence, we don't assume ontology. Yeah, we obviously do. They say the Spillers evidence, even though this is seemingly compelling, because the Spillers is within the canon of Black thought. Spillers is not making a claim that's saying that ontology is false. Spillers is literally just saying that engaging with politics is probably an ethical thing, like voting is probably something we should do. Our alternative is not a complete political nihilism or embracement of inevitability. Aaron cites movements that non-Black people and Black people can engage in. They say that social death is wrong. The card is horrible. It just says that homogenization of the
Is that him?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, we're gonna pause it and tell him what the time was.
Yeah, does anyone time me?
No.
Okay, we can just tell him the last thing he was saying, which was the Aaron stuff.
Heard. Hi, y'all. The nature of the beast is the internet. I'm gonna message him and be like, your internet froze. To stop talking, to the waste your energy. That's the nature of the beast.
Do y'all see Rohith's like frozen form? Oh, it went away. Anybody want some Cocoa Puffs?
Yeah, can I get those Cocoa Puffs?
Ew.
Why are you hating on Cocoa Puffs?
Because they're not good.
She likes, Lucky Charms.
And you like Fruity
First of
Pebbles.
all,
Don't ever. Don't do that.
what is the Lucky Charms without the marshmallows?
What just happened?
Lucky Charms.
You cut out the last thing you were talking about, Rohith, was you were like, Aaron's, isn't purely pessimistic. It cites movements. Reinhardt's critique of social death is wrong.
Oh, I didn't even get to the link debate.
No.
No.
It just cut out.
How much time do you have left?
The one I noticed it, I stopped at 2:30.
Okay.
It probably was like 45 seconds before that.
And how long do you think between that and when you were talking about like social death?
You said 45 seconds? Can we just
Like,
put it at like 3:15?
That's
seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said the Spiller stuff is where you stopped?
No, Aaron's. Yeah,
What?
you were responding to Spillers, and also with your explanation of Aaron's, and then as Jacob said, saying that Reinhardt's theory of ontology wrong, or social death wrong.
Okay. I guess I'll start.
That's where you stopped. And then we're like,
Okay, I'll do that then. All right, I'm going to start. These Spillers evidence, Spillers is not making a totalizing claim that ontology is false. Spillers is literally saying that engaging with politics is probably a good thing. Our Aryan alternative is not a complete rejection of all political engagement. It rather says that one, non-Black individuals should question their subjectivities and the ways that they orient towards Black folk first, which is something that Spillers does not account for, because our alternative is not merely about political engagement, but it's rather about the cultivation of discourse. And two, Aryan cites music. They say social death is not true. The card is horrible. It just says that the homogenization of the Black experience is bad. Our argument is that Our argument is not that Black folk have the exact same experience everywhere you go, rather that Blackness is the focal point of every experience, that the epidermalization of Black folk is what causes that similar experience. They say the law existed prior to the Middle Passage. That's their war and answer. That's a shitty ass argument. It does. We don't hear about what happened prior to the Middle Passage. It's a question of the shift that event that event catalyzed. They say that we don't defend Black existentialism. One, Gordon derives his theory and criticism of pessimism from existentialism. Otherwise, you would divert to our theory. Let me find my document. Yeah, okay. Link debate. First thing is the scientific neutrality decide. That's the one easy attempt to condemn the deification of Black folk is a creation of the one-to-one correlation between data and Blackness is a misdiagnosis. Blackness is unable to be schematized via data, and data is fundamentally constructed in opposition to Black folk. Is seen when the data of Chavez Carter was what allowed him to be shot in the first place while being handcuffed. Two implications for this misunderstanding. One, your form of pragmatic analysis and a problem solution mindset is the same form of schematization. Two, you still require data to deploy a facade of change. Seen when we focus on increasing education rates for Black folks, but while disregarding the entrenchment of segregation within this very educational space, turns the case deification of Black folk becomes continuous, because when he sees always trying to respond to the criticism and attempt to resolve the issue of anti-Blackness. The next thing is the biometric amnesia. This is how to see brown evidence. Biometric technologies throw off the ability to recognize and acknowledge a user's presence. The one he assumes a form of acknowledgement is universally applicable without taking into account the distinction between existence and ontology that gives birth to our modern world. Black folk exist, but the lack of recognition and acknowledgement is what traumatizes their active reform. The one he sees attempt to reform a system that is only ever built in a form of recognition, i.e. DNA systems are only ever inflicting violence off of recognition, means that Black folk are forgotten in the midst of reform. As seen where the voting rights Act did nothing for the disregarding of millions of Black folks in the Bush election. The impact is the mystification of objective vertigo turns the case they've made discrimination and targeting that they highly inevitable to their inability to ever grasp the relationship between the desire to see under biometric systems, the unseeing of Black violence. The third link is the equilibrium. This how to see what will evidence. Don't make me extend the entire thing because their answer was horrible. The resolution disposits itself into the arc of redemption that only gains motion through traction of Black objection. The one sees move to operate through resolution question, crowds out gamers is suffering, capable of grappling with the anti-Black reality, seen when spectacles of brutality of Oscar Mayer are highlighted while we ignore mass marginalization of school districts in California. The impact is the mystification of objective vertigo. Their model of debate has become entrenched in the redemption of institutions. Their recognition of neutrality being bad, being still utilized through that register when complaining about mooting out ground and needing to rely upon absolvency, and then moving back to the restoration of objectivity is what Wooderson says when moving from equilibrium to disequilibrium to equilibrium restore the alt debate. I extended on the line by line, but understand Aaron's alternative as separate from what Spillers criticizes.
Okay. You good? You good, Rohith?
What?
You good, Rohith?
Yeah.
So top of the 2NC says we drop a libidinal economy. What part of the 1NC do you think rises to the level of a statement that says the libidinal economy is overdetermining? Controlled F. Libidinal operates 3 times in the 1AC, not in your, or 1NC, not in tags. First is we need to think libidinally. There is a libidinal relationship. Does it cite studies? Does it prove it?
Is your question where in the 1NC has stated libidinal economy?
Yeah, where do you think you've risen to the level to prove that
piece
claim?
of Wooderson evidence is perfect on this. Let me pull it up so I can get quotes. It says, violence against the slave sustains a kind of psychic stability for those who are not slaves. The conception of humanity, conception of freedom, the conception of communal and interpersonal presence is a conceptual antithesis.
That's a claim. Where's the warrant? Does it cite studies to prove the claim that there's some unconscious that we don't know?
One, like the idea that libidinal economy needs to be falsified is something that if you said we'd have critiqued, but writ large, you don't have any criticism of our unconscious claims.
Do you have proof that unconscious desires exist?
Yeah,
like that there is an unconscious.
Our historical analysis of the ways in which Black people have systematically been constantly subjugated to violence is what our warrant is.
So like subjugation necessarily means
like unless you provide a rational explanation unless you provide a rational explanation, as I said in the overview, for things like what happened to Amadou Diallo or instances of gratuity that can only be ever explained through the libidinal economy, then you will win the libidinal economy debate.
All right,
Until then, you don't have access to unconscious claims.
So you said the alternative isn't complete nihilism. Voting is fine. What movements exist in the alternative that you're cool with?
I think that I never said that voting is necessarily something that Aaron talks about. I'm just saying that Spillers assumes complete negation, and there's a quote in her card where she talks about
I'm asking
complete
you.
negation being unethical. Aaron is merely making the claim that before we engage in the political or before we engage in any sort of movement, we need to first forefront blackness, i.e., the role that he brings about for non-black people.
Yeah. So after that fact, can we make any political decisions?
Well, I think that after we have forefronted blackness, we will then realize that reformism is no longer possible. Spillers is merely saying that voting for voting's sake.
So yay, nay, politics possible post-alt.
Right. No. Spillers is saying that voting for voting's sake is ethical, not that voting to alleviate the structural conditions of blackness is what is going to happen.
Really what Spillers is saying. Okay. In the world of the alternative, does the alt end DNA surveillance practices?
What?
Does the alternative end DNA surveillance practices?
Well, I think that the alternative is more of like a framework alternative. So you're kind of misunderstanding.
So does it change anything about the material conditions of the world?
Well, neither do you, but.
No, you can go for the fiat argument. I'm just asking you, do you defend any of that?
Huh?
Do you defend any changes?
Does cite movements, but I think before you get access to any political permutation, you need to be able to explain how your movement towards political legitimacy is able to forefront blackness first.
Okay.
Which is the entirety of Aaron's claim.
All right.
Okay, 1 and R.
Ne'Jahra, do you want to go to the prep room or are you good?
Well, I believe I'm good, but if you need to tell me something real quick.
Okay, I think we're good.
Let's hear it.
Are you TikToking again?
A TikTok?
It's like I don't know. I don't do the TikTok thing. I'm not hip. I'm
done with all the cringiness. No,
I get to be cringy. Okay.
Did you tell Junior to go to the closet again?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember saying that. So crazy.
Okay, Nicole TV. You taught me that. You good?
Right. Yeah, I'm ready when everybody else is.
What's the order?
All
right. What's the order?
K then case.
Yep.
All right. The role of judges for the best theoretical motive, thought, and understanding the suffering of the state. When there's a risk of an ass process or theory in the world of is anti-black, then you have to write a neg ballot. They have to answer our arguments on the prior question in order to win this debate. Number one, I'm going to go on a double dipping. Get your chip out the bowl because you are double dipping, Jacob. The 1AC makes the claim that that they're critiquing objectively, but their framework relies on that this is the question of your standing. This is the question of your starting point in the app is a constant, and the Jones is if the app is consistent with the Jones evidence, the 1AC can seem radical, but actually does nothing. You should reject the app because it doesn't stay consistent. It doesn't stay consistent with the 1AC. Top level framing on the framework flow. We need to win at the methodology and scholarship accuracy. The 1AC is edited by you vote, and then you vote negative. Failure to do so results in a link of consumerism, not omission. The commission of the quote according to the environmental level of speech forever erasing blacks existing for any radical calculus. Language is not a neutral system, but rather but that was the 2NC. If we went that there's a risk in the model resulting in sidelining of discussion, and you will understand that the way to form of phobia and the reason why the space hides behind the goal and sides of inclusive, but black debaters and black coaches are still signified because this is the same form. This is the same form of independently. We require questioning the weighing of the affirmative, the very presentation of black subjectivity will ever be prerequisite to the concept. Lord Jesus, my throat. Concept of value that we are prerequisite in evaluating desirability to the plan because desirability can never be truly tested for all individuals within an anti-black morality, meaning that the one AR needs to short circuit every piece of external options. Are they loose? Are they lose? The debate becomes a question of research practice. They will win all their shares, but if we prove that their model of education is anti-black, then we will win their claims of interpretation collective of anti-black education counter interpretation. The one AC has to defend the scholarship through the undergrads of being part of it in the implications of some activities before this for a couple of weeks. We saw the first time education better because we developed the topic literature and analyzed it further for their model of debate. We are reasonable. B simulation DA. Their counter interpretation is funded by the simulation that in the engagement in political is mutually accessible for every the account about how black bodies are marked in the status quo and constantly excluded from the prior measures of engagement in politics to help forever sidelines the recognition of reality secretly of occupying and maintaining the forms of black violence. C of cruel organism. Their multiple politics is one that evokes cruelly optimistic. This is a violence of black debaters that they are forced to invest in political. They are forced to invest in political hope. That is 717. The literal destruction of black bodies occurs through the social life and legal extending ways of facility and black people and communities development rather than mutual ways to see how metaphysical, legal, and economic constructions of life via the hope of both liberal and physical. There's no ground for explaining black suffering. Plan is a small screen that prevents the next type of carrying violence because it continues fungibility to sucker blackness is something is being but never is black. That is text 10. Freedom proceeding not allowed to be more difficult to the question of what is immediate suffer. No, none of it such as done about planning. We are not have the language currently that articulates articulates and go on to the permutation. I'll probably come back to framework later. If we win the framework debate, we won't be able to question the permutation all about the models of debate. The permutation doesn't solve is the question of method and the sequencing for permutation is incoherent because of the alternative is pedagogically a choice that trades off with theirs because that's the framework debate. They are serving all their residents prior question of all their offense, all the links to the diss after the permutation. We have indicated that the one he sees a level of grammar of how they contribute to anti-black subjectivity and formulation. The permutation correct the alternative. Liberal investigation the purpose only occurs new link mainly incorrection with a specific analysis of anti-blackness and the theory of power of overturnation and scholarship and to preserve entitlement of blackness fungibility and the purpose and form of commodification turning black scholarship into a subject that can be imposed by anything that the app wants. And I'm going to go on to their specific orientation right now. They said term do the app and the alternative, but no, that's the Kennedy. The app will latch itself onto the alternative like the Kennedy and latch itself onto the civil rights movement. Kennedy then had the choice to say who was a good black and how blacks should protest. That only leads to white people telling black people how they should protest. And then they said do the app in every other instance of the affirmative. Do the app in every other instance of the alternative. White people get to pick and choose how black people should protest, and that's multiple reasons why you should reject the permutation and use our links as limited dispatch for why the permutation fails. And I'm going to go on to case. You can vote app on presumption you can vote app on the presumption you can vote neg on the presumption that the app does not do shit for black people. They literally said that racism will continue to exist even after the 1AC. They try to make this argument that the 1AC is necessary in order for this to happen, but I don't find the 1AC's methods necessary in order to fix the larger structure of anti-blackness. They try to say that they don't solve for anti-blackness, like the app doesn't solve for war. But if you're going to read an app on anti-blackness, then you should be able to solve that shit for black people. Somebody shut the dog up. Damn. Oh shit. All right, I'm good.
All right. So, Jay, taking prep for the 1AR?
Yeah, I don't need to go to another breakout room because I don't know who I'm going to talk to.
Oh, he said he ain't going to talk to you, Jasmine.
Well, Jasmine's the moderator.
I am. So, I guess,
you never know.
You know. While Jacob is taking prep, wanted to do some kind of housekeeping things. Wanted to once again say thank you to everybody who is watching the stream, as well as to folks who have bought into the Debate Boutique via watching our videos, watching the content. It means a lot. We're putting a lot of work into working with our students to produce some good debates, growth, and challenge. And so if you're into, pedagogy, debate, learning, growing, having your arguments tested, having ownership of your arguments, sign up. We have a July summer session that's coming up on July 12th through the 26th. Registration closes on the 5th. For anybody who has, heard or watched the stream, knows this is like my go-to speech because I'm here to really push for Debate Boutique because I believe in it. And I think that it is something that is useful for students on the college and high school level. And if the summer session is not something that you want to participate in because you don't have the time for it, come on over to our August Boutique Burner. It is going to be from the 10th to the 17th, I believe, of August. It's where after camp or not going to camp, you have all these ideas and thoughts and commentary for what you've received. We can help kind of consolidate that into arguments, how to make that into and test them, give you a platform to engage and to have your arguments tested, give you some digital clout, just kind of be out here in the space, having a good time, having fun before the season starts. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to our Gmail or reach out to us on our website at www.debateboutique.com. The Gmail is debateboutique@gmail.com, or just DM me on Facebook if I know who you are. But if you're a student DMing me, please don't DM me. Please email the Debate Boutique Gmail or hit us up on the website so that I don't have to deal with the children hitting me up all the time. How do y'all feel? Feel good?
My throat hurt.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign of work being put in. Rohith is zoned in, so I'm going to stop annoying people.
Well, duh. You were just going ham on this thing.
I'm going to send you my 1AR doc.
Y'all open up the document.
Just tell me when y'all have it open. Lord, my legs are tired.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know it was muted. We're good.
Okay.
Do you have track of prep? Because I don't.
I didn't really think. I think I took about 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so we're good. It's gonna be case in the K. All right. The role of the ballot is whoever does the best debating. However, the judge should decide the debate on whether whoever presides the material response to material impacts. They've not outlined how the alternative resolves any of their link arguments. A vague ontology claim without an alternative explanation is a non-unique DA set at worst and cruel pessimism. At worst, you should vote affirmative to challenge the legalistic project that law enforcement agencies utilize to steal DNA information from innocent individuals. 1AC Ahmed indicates that the recent court decisions allow non-convicted individuals to be placed in databases like CODIS. There are illitimate impacts that are not answered in the blocks. I'll extend them here. Don't make me reinvent the wheel. First is hypercriminalization. Over-policing and surveillance of Black communities means that DNA databases are biased against Black and Latino communities. This means that DNA databases are 4 times more likely to convict Black men on false evidence. B is eugenics. DNA databases spill over broadly to indefinite genetic surveillance, wherein civil society is able to manipulate genetic information in favor of ableist and anti-Black eugenic practices. This allows total control of the state at the level of the genome, which is a more hyper-specific impact. Don't vote negative on presumption. Affirmatives don't have to resolve every impact in the world. We only have to resolve specific impacts which they have not answered. Targeted reforms are good. All or nothing strategies misfire the particular techniques used for racialization. Yes, we don't end all police violence. We end a specific way in which police violence happens, which they have not answered. They conceded the act enshrines a law into a restriction that for the ability for institutions to acquire DNA from innocent individuals. That's the feral evidence case. Okay. We should get to weigh the affirmative. Anything else is infinitely regressive and destroys the possibility of clash because it moves the goalpost based on the goodwill of the negative block. Epistemic orientations aren't sufficient for class because epistemic orientations don't make sense absent specific goals. That's Bracy. Discourse first is infinitely regressive because they could pick out any word of the 1AC which destroys class. Operating at the level of discourse doesn't solve the material conditions. Grammar first is meaningless. Grammar only makes sense in the context of particular words or policies. Anything else creates massive judge intervention when the internal feelings of the judge become the determinator of the ballot, which links to all of their arguments about the libidinal economy. There's no link to the simulation or cruel optimism. That argument is about waving a magic wand, but instead imagining contingent futures that can be enacted through specific reforms. All of our solvency arguments say that now is a key time to shift the doctrine of DNA surveillance, which proves the possibility to enact at the level they've conceded the RAIN evidence, which we explained above, but it impacts both of these arguments. Top level, you should be suspicious of a 2 and C that's almost all theory without any explanation or impact at the level of praxis or the affirmative solvency. You should strike through any theoretical arguments if you aren't able to trace it back to a material implication from the debate. They haven't given you any studies for proving it evidence or example of a libidinal economy being unmutable. They have not produced any studies justifying these ontological claims. Using historical examples doesn't prove a paradigm. Neuroscience proves these biases are actually flexible, and even if they aren't, the affirmative prevents those biases from coalescing to eugenic politics. 8 examples should not be enough to prove all of their ontological claims. If we win a single counterexample, then it disproves it because that's at least a much more than their matter of difference. Material violence does matter. They can win claims about objective vertigo, but that doesn't explain the contextual examples in these contexts. Frame the debate through the permutation. They have very specific link arguments to the mechanism, the plan, just large scale extraction, 2 and C concession that the alternative doesn't foreclose voting or politics proves you should be willing to risk some portion of the offense. Going for permutation, do the app as part of the alternative. We've accounted for the ways in which genetic surveillance ontologizes race science at the level of anti-blackness into the genome to justify interventions and scientific experimentation on black communities. This doesn't link to their Kennedy example. The 1AC was already this discussion. We don't tell black people how to protest. Instead, we challenge the racial dogma that is enshrined via whiteness. Beyond that, they're just wrong about ontology at multiple levels. First is politics. The political scheme is not irreversibly anti-black. The anti-black system of governance is made habitual through repetition, but it's not impossible to challenge it through legal responses. Multiple examples: Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, the Indian catch bill in California. Still she rises in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Public Defense Office working towards war with black monitors who call for police and abolition, anti-apartheid movements, and massive environmental race and lawsuits prove the potential change. 2 and C arguments just prove some faults with these policies. It doesn't disprove the fact. It just indicates they did not go far enough, which does not disprove their ontological claim. This means you should change the scale of how you view offense in the debate. They're playing Russian roulette with people's lives. If you have any hesitation on if they're right, you should vote affirmative to fight another day. Even if they win, it can't get better. It can undeniably get worse, especially true when they've conceded the eugenics argument. Social death is wrong. At best, it's depoliticizing. At worst, it denies the potentiality of resistance. RAIN evidence says they misread the importance of hope. The affirmative is not a naive belief in the inevitable nature of progressive change, but says that giving up the completion is white supremacy. Voter disenfranchisement and nihilism are two sides of the same coin as the anti-black system of governance. One anti-blackness to feel as it is inevitable, no risk of a revolutionary fatigue argument, which is answered above. The link debate proper. The data argument proves our argument. We are the critique of the schematization of data at the level of genetics. The Brown evidence, there's no impact extended to this argument. Sits mostly in FYI that isn't applied to the results of the affirmative. The link of omission argument, it's infinitely regressive. They can point to an infinite amount of things the affirmative didn't mention. They have to prove a trade-off argument. They've also independently conceded private actor is a voting issue. It makes it structurally impossible to be affirmative because they can field any number of movements or any number of people questioning their politics, which allows things like Elon Musk or anything, which makes it impossible, which means you should be suspect of the alternative explanation, especially when they have not explained who does it or how it does, which creates a vague alternative that not only doesn't solve, but doesn't solve the material conditions of the world, which means they don't have an impact argument. If we win any of our framework argument, it means you should prioritize, policies or solutions to violence.
To the breakout room.
I think I have how much, Jasmine?
7, I believe. Like 7. So you used like 3 minutes. No, 2 minutes. You said 7:20, something like that.
We're doing 10 minutes of prep.
We both could use it.
No,
8.
no.
I have the prep time. We're at 5 something.
Okay.
It's on my phone.
All right, I'll go to the little.
And
y'all-
actually, seems like a pretty dope person.
Heard. All
don't-
right.
I don't know if they can hear me.
Jasmine, can I have my video back?
Did you change the video?
Yes.
Okay. All right, 2&R.
Okay, y'all can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. The order will be K on the line by line. When I do it, I'll start K's line by line, and then I'll do the K line by line. Okay. All right.
Overview. Case
Yeah.
K.
Overview, like, I guess case, yeah. It's just like the stuff on the line by line that you answered, like presumption stuff.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are we good?
Yeah.
Tons of thesis level concession coming out of the 1ER, but first protected 2&R without being able to draw a connection between the 1ER, so the 1AC to the 2AC to the 2AR, i.e. when they make the first response to the libidinal economy in the 1AR, you will protect the 2&R. Lack of objections undergirds modernity and operates through a void of grand coherence to the unconscious desires of the world. We assume the entirety of the 1AC's conception of the world and the conceptual grid of blackness structures the very enunciations of language, meaning we internally turn the entirety of the affirmative level of grammar. They keep questioning why the grammar is such an important thing, because their very unconscious sentiments is how the grammars manifest. Unconscious bias, the unconscious bias of the 1EC, and how they attempt to mitigate that is our internal link to the affirmative. What does the 1EC really change when they have not been able to grapple with the unconscious levels and the ways in which unconscious biases always re-territorialized? We control the entirety, the very deployment of language itself, meaning if we prove that the 1EC operates through a racial simulacrum, i.e. through any external decide or any link turn, then we will win that they are filled with unconscious sentiments. We're in a single piece of external offense on the framework or trace case argument that we will win a structural kin that undergirds language itself, which is a prior question means you fundamentally vote negative. Our external impact is objective vertigo. They have not been able to grapple with the difference between objective vertigo and their instance of racial violence that they try to mitigate. Objective status of violence imposed on flesh is never opposed to a redemptive arc. This is the sustaining terror of blackness that renders being coherent, meaning we have an explanatory agreement for all violence in the world that we are a prior question. I'm going to make this very clear. This is a debate about the model of debate, not a debate about the material implications of a plan or the permutation, etc. I'll do the line by line in a case here. The role of the ballot is to, they say the role of the ballot is to vote for the better debater. We think that the better debater is one that affords a model that is not filled with contradictions. That's something they should be able to defend. They see the alternative does not resolve the links. One, it's not a question of the alternative anymore. We are kicking out the alternative. This is a question of a models debate. You're going to vote for our model if you think that their model is fundamentally anti-black. They said we don't answer the bias and stuff. Yes, the top of every single overview, I've answered the bias and stuff. The liberal economy internally turns all of your biases offense. The ontology stuff, winning ontology will frame the entireties of the 1AC's orientation. You're going to extend the role of the value here. If we prove that their grammar results in contradictions, you vote negative. This contradiction is evident throughout their call to, the 1AC call to a rejection of neutrality or rejection of unconscious biases. The 1AC does not do that. Their model of debate leads to teams acting under the facade of change, but never answer the question of how their very starting point is anti-black. The ballot is only a question of what about the methodology scholarship, or obviously the 1AC's anti-black. That's a prior question. Extend the counter to the 1AC has to defend the scholarship and thought that undergirds the affirmative its implication on subjectivities. Their status point does not allow us to question our subjectivities. I'm going to extend the equilibrium decide that is going to win us this round. This one completely dropped. The 1AC's move to a resolutional question operates through a mode of education that crowds out grammars of suffering and operates through a mode of equilibrium to disequilibrium to equilibrium restored, i.e. when they question neutrality but then engage in modes of neutrality because that's the only way that they can even posit a solution to the question of anti-blackness. The next, I'll do the line by line, the cruel optimism decide the surveillance decide. I'm going to go for the cruel optimism decide. Their heuristic for engagement is cruelly optimistic for black debaters, forcing them to invest in a political system to funnel hope in institutions never fully return our promises, i.e. destroy psychic energy, producing racial battle fatigue. They wanted actual evidence as to how this implicates black individuals. Yeah, there's your evidence. You just dropped this decide. They say that we don't have evidence. No, we don't have evidence about the libidinal economy stuff. One, they dropped it. Sorry, that's your problem. Two, we still are waiting on a counter explanation for instance of gratuity, i.e. what happened to Amadou Diallo. Without out that they don't get access to any sort of neuroscience claims that they make. The permutation, no, it's no longer a question of the permutation. It's about competing models. The ontology, they screwed this debate over. One, the example debates, the example was super late. The Civil Rights Act, I already turned that. Freedom fighters were burned in the aftermath of the Civil Rights Movement, and lynching continued years after the Voting Rights Act. Bush election proves that this doesn't mean anything. Cash bill doesn't matter. Incarceration levels are higher. There's still, when she rises down, this is a horrible example. They've literally said that they experienced libidinal interactions with judges and prosecutors, and that they felt that they couldn't do things in the face of judges and prosecutors being blatantly anti-Black. They say that grammar first is meaningless. No, grammar first is not meaningless. No, debaters can't control the orientations and the grammars that they forward. We don't do anything materially. Materiality should not be questioned. It's merely about whether or not they can even evaluate the impacts before materiality, because we are making a prior question grammar claim that is a prior question to evaluating whether or not the 1AC even solves anything. The RAIN evidence, they think that this is good. It's a pretty shitty piece of evidence. It doesn't even answer our question about how ontology is not about homogenizing the experiences, rather about focalizing all experience through a center point of Blackness. Two, you're misreading. You are a misreading of hope. Political hope is not transformative, as Rana says. The cruel optimism decided can crossfly here. Political hope has material implications on Black debaters. They fundamentally dropped that. You are going to vote for our model debate, two external disads. If we want to risk that their grammar is anti-Black through the libidinal economy stuff that goes straight dropped, you vote for our counter trip as a rejection of that.
All right.
Good job, GG.
Let me start.
Why Rohith walked on my life like my
All right, let's get into it.
Is everyone good? The order is going to be case in the K. Is that a yes, Rohith, Ne'Jahra, are you good? Okay. You should vote affirmative to challenge the legalistic process that law enforcement agencies utilize to steal DNA from innocent individuals. The 1AC Ahmed evidence case that recent court decisions allow non-convicted individuals to be placed in databases like CODIS. There are litany impacts not answered in any of the debate. First is hypercriminalization. Over-policing surveillance means that DNA bases are biased and used to criminalize Black communities. B is eugenics. DNA databases will have broadly indefinite or infinite genetic surveillance, where in civil society is able to manipulate genetic information in favor of ableist anti-Black eugenic process. This allows total control of the genome and literally allows scientific testing and control, which means it's a massive scale argument for the level of the arguments. Large scale framing arguments on the K. They have no explanation of an alternative nor a specific link argument to the 1AC. Absent an alternative, they have not given you a way to weigh their link arguments. All of their arguments describe the status quo, but do not describe how to do anything to resolve that. What about their challenge at the level of scholarship? What does it mean? They have means they have to win a risk that their link arguments outweigh the affirmative, but they have not given a single example of rollbacks in the context of the affirmative, just in the Voting Rights Act, which is not sufficient. They've conceded a litany of 1AC evidence that says both the affirmative is politically possible in this current moment, which takes out the impact of their cruel optimism argument, but also that it can't get circumvented because law enforcement agencies have to follow federal mandates to access CODIT, which is a federally run institution. You should frame this debate through the permutation. They don't answer it, and they have no specific link arguments in the context of the plan, just large scales of abstraction, 2NC and 2NR concessions that the alternative doesn't foreclose voting in the midterms or politics proves you should be willing to risk some portion of offense for changing material conditions. Going for the permutation means do the affirmative as part of the alternative, which solves your questioning or your libidinal arguments. We've accounted for the ways in which genetic surveillance ontologizes race science at the level of the genome to justify interventions into Black communities. This means you should prioritize the specificity of our arguments over the abstraction of their arguments. If you can't explain what about the affirmative advocacy is bad at the end of the debate, then you have to vote affirmative. Their reliance upon the libidinal economy functionally flattens the contours of violence to a degree that makes it heuristically unhelpful. Is there a distinction between police abolition and increased funding? Is there a difference between a world where a government has the right to literally encode racism into genetics through medical testing? These contours matter and prove the necessity of our argument and our framework arguments. We should get to weigh the affirmative. It's the only way to test clash and understand the importance of political and meaningful responses. Anything else is infinitely aggressive and destroys the possibility of clash, which they've conceded is the only internal link to any mechanisms of solvency or any of their question. They've also conceded their argument about scholarships and letting the judge decide based on their feeling would link to all the arguments about libidinal economy, because it would allow them to not have any mechanism of accountability of what are the logical results of our politics. Epistemic orientations also don't solve for any of the clash arguments, and they haven't solved. They conceded discourse first is infinitely regressive and doesn't make sense for a few reasons. First is grammar is meaningless absent political context, proven by the fact that even Wilderson or other people cite historical examples like Dred Scott to prove their argument, which proves without those historical examples, they would not make sense or not have justification arguments. It causes massive judge intervention, which proves the arguments. They only have two arguments here. First is equilibrium. Just said, sorry, this is not going to win you the debate. They haven't answered any of the questions about the material results of the affirmative, which will be a little below, but the equilibrium, disequilibrium does not make sense when there are material people on the ground being surveilled and literally criminalized due to these arguments. They also haven't explained an impact of this argument between an abstract concept, objective vertigo, i.e. the models of debate, but they have not explained how their model of debate solves or impacts the questions of grammar are made meaningful by historical examples. The cruel optimism just said they've conceded two responses. First is the rain evidence. The rain evidence says they've gotten it backwards. Cruel pessimism is actually psychically damaging as it literally habituates themselves into believing a better world isn't possible. Finding for contingent gains is effective and psychically helpful as it provides the conditions for better worlds. Second, they've conceded is possible in the context of the world, and the debate does spill out because it gives contingent moments of how to change the world that can be actualized. Gratuity doesn't mean you won politics are bad. They can we don't have to win the ontology debate, but I'll explain how we win in both worlds. If we lose the ontology debate, things might not be able to get better, but they can undeniably get worse. If violence exists now, it undeniably gets worse in a world where state is able to manifest those unconscious biases in defiant politics. And gratuity describes the irrationality of violence, but doesn't disprove the possibility of preventing that from entering into the material harm, which means if they are right about the psyche, we are the only ones able to solve it. But B, they are wrong. The libidinal stuff doesn't make sense. It presumes you've won all of the ontology arguments. If the libidinal economy is true, then why has any political Regis ever succeeded, they have to answer why cash bail ended in California. Why did anti-apartheid movement succeed? We have why did environmental racism won by Black communities? Why have counties been forced to enact police reform in response to massive protests? 8 examples are not enough to prove a claim. Your evidence is not citing studies or any examples. Yes, they aren't perfect. You've cited examples why the Civil Rights Act did not solve all violence, but that does not disprove the model or the effectiveness of a change. And there's no rollback in the example of any of our arguments or any of the context of what these means, which proves means the examples did not go far enough, not that they were bad in themselves, which also doesn't prove any of the affirmative arguments, which means we could make a soft ontological claim proven by all their permutation arguments. And that's time.
All right. Clap, clap, clap to everybody who was part of this debate. Thank you so much. This was another example of our student demo. We had the debaters Ne'Jahra Soriano and Rohith. Raman, am I saying your name right? Rohith? And they are upcoming seniors this year, and we'll be debating on the 2020-2021 topic, as many of you who are either watching or who are going to watch are. And they are our first participants in our June summer session. And I'm so incredibly proud of the work that they have done, how much growth they have shown, and it has been vast. And so to put themselves on the line and to be streamed and to show that growth and to show those arguments is something that does not go unnoticed and is no small feat. And if you are a student who is still making that decision as to whether or not you want to go to camp or have some type of debate experience over the summer, please consider us. We're here to start with you at the pace that you are at, and to not attempt to push you any further in a way that is uncomfortable, but in a way that is where we see your strengths and where we see kind of where your development is heading. And so if that is something that you are interested in and kind of want to be a part of the community that we are fortifying and growing, I would suggest hitting up the Gmail, hitting up the website, www.debateboutique.com or debateboutique@gmail.com, or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. We're all on all the social medias. Someone said make a TikTok. I don't know about that one because I just can't do that stuff.
Make a TikTok.
No, I
be
I don't.
TikToking. Get cooking.
Okay.
Come on, we doing that thing again.
Mute that, please. And so I just wanted to further that appreciation and to let y'all know that we're here and we're not going anyplace. Debate Boutique is a new kind of community organization, a new kind of way of thinking about doing debate, offering services to students and from the college and high school way. And so we're super excited to have debuted our first session with y'all. Kind of waiting on Squid to take the stream off the air so that we can end the call. So